All right, welcome everyone to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at India. As of February 9th,
Yeah.
2025,
Okay.
we've got a whole bunch of articles here from different sources, the Economic Times, Reuters, BBC, all that good stuff.
Right.
And we're going to try to kind of like piece together what's going on in the country right now. So it's like you've got a friend in India, and they're sending you just the most interesting news clippings.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for.
I like that analogy. We're looking beyond those isolated events, trying to get that holistic snapshot of where India stands both domestically and on the world stage.
Exactly. So let's jump right in. Hard to ignore all the buzz around Aero India 2025. It's happening right now in Bengaluru.
Yeah.
A ton of really impressive displays of military strength and technology. We're seeing joint flights in the LCA Tejas.
Yeah.
The Indian Navy's showing off some of their newest equipment.
It's more than just an air show, though. I mean, you've got over 100 global defense companies participating, including some really big names from the US, France, and Russia. Aero India is like a who's who of the global defense industry. And it's all happening in India. It's a huge signal of India's growing influence in the sector.
And here's where it gets really interesting. For the first time, they're showcasing both the Russian Su-57 and the American F-35
Wow.
stealth fighters side by side. So what do you make of that? What kind of message do you think India is sending by showcasing both of these advanced fighter jets?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? On the one hand, it signals that India is open to collaboration with both superpowers, maybe even playing them off each other a little to get the best deals. But on the other hand, it also suggests that India is determined to chart its own course, maintaining a sense of independence in its defense strategy. It's a key takeaway for anyone watching India's rise on the global stage. This is a country that's not just aligning itself with one bloc or the other.
It's a delicate balancing act for sure. And speaking of strengthening their defense, they're expecting stable delivery of those domestically made light combat aircraft in the upcoming fiscal year.
Right.
That's a pretty big step towards bolstering the Indian Air Force, especially considering China's military expansion.
Absolutely. India is definitely focused on bolstering its defense capabilities. But Aero India, it presents this picture of strength, of ambition. But then you look at the economic news coming out of India, it paints a bit of a more complicated picture.
Yeah, India's set a goal to become a developed nation by 2047. But they've got some pretty serious economic hurdles to overcome.
They do. To reach that 2047 goal, they need consistent, robust growth, closer to 8% annually. But recent reports are showing that growth has slowed down. For 3 quarters straight now, they're projecting just 6.4% for this fiscal year. That's the slowest in 4 years. That's a bit of a red flag.
It is, and it's not just about the numbers either. I mean, this slowdown translates to real challenges for people. You're talking high unemployment, persistent food inflation. That's hitting every day, folks.
Yeah.
Weak investment. Those are the things that really impact people's lives.
Exactly. And then on top of that, the rupee recently hit a record low against the US dollar. That lack of confidence from global markets, it adds another layer of complexity to the economic picture.
It does. So we're seeing these worrying signs on the economic front. But before we get too deep into that, there are a few other headlines I want to unpack, starting with some political developments that have caught my eye.
On the surface, India's political landscape might seem pretty stable, especially with Modi's BJP party securing a big win. In the Delhi Assembly election, their first victory there in 27 years.
It is a pretty significant win.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how this victory might affect the political balance in India?
Well, it definitely solidifies the BJP's dominance and strengthens Modi's grip on power. However, it's important to remember that beneath this surface of stability, there are still tensions simmering, ongoing internal conflicts that can't be ignored.
The recent clash between security forces and Maoist rebels in Chhattisgarh, resulting in casualties on both sides. That's a stark reminder of the challenges India faces. It's a conflict rooted in deep socioeconomic disparities.
And historical grievances.
Exactly. It underscores the fact that even as India projects this image of strength and progress on the global stage, it continues to grapple with these internal challenges that require a very nuanced and multifaceted approach.
So we've talked about the economic slowdown, political dynamics, internal conflicts, but there's another layer to this story that I find particularly interesting. It's the intersection of global finance and geopolitics. I'm talking about those reports revealing over $270 million in U.S. grants given to organizations linked to George Soros, funding projects in various countries, including India. That have sparked quite a bit of controversy. It's a very complex issue. It raises a lot of questions about transparency, accountability, and the potential for foreign funding to influence domestic affairs. Some people argue that these projects, they promote democracy and human rights, but others view them as meddling in sovereign affairs and pushing a very specific ideological agenda.
Right, and it's not just a debate happening behind closed doors either.
Right.
We've seen high-profile figures like Elon Musk publicly criticizing Soros and questioning the use of these funds. It's a conversation that's spilling over into the public sphere, adding another layer of complexity to U.S.-India relations.
Absolutely. This revelation has the potential to create some friction between the two countries, especially given India's historically strong stance on maintaining its sovereignty. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out and if it has any impact on future collaborations and partnerships.
It's a reminder that these global financial flows and ideological battles are all intertwined in ways that can have some far-reaching consequences. And this isn't just about India. It's kind of a microcosm of the broader dynamics playing out on the world stage. So for our listeners, in, say, the U.S., why should they even care about this? What are the implications of this revelation for them?
Well, we live in a very interconnected world. What happens in India, even with regards to U.S. funding, it can have ripple effects across the globe, impacting geopolitical alliances, economic partnerships, even public discourse in unexpected ways.
Okay, so we've explored some of the challenges and controversies facing India. But amidst all of that, there are also some bright spots that deserve our attention. I'm particularly struck by the projections. For India's pharmaceutical industry, they're aiming for $350 billion in exports by 2047. That's a staggering number.
It is, and it highlights the dynamism and the potential of certain sectors of the Indian economy. What's particularly interesting is that India is moving beyond simply producing generic drugs. They're making a conscious effort to climb the value chain, focusing on innovation, specialty generics, biosimilars, and even novel drug development.
It's a shift from a volume-driven approach to one that emphasizes high value, cutting-edge solutions. It's impressive to see them taking on this leadership role.
Yeah, it speaks to India's ambition to not just be a player, but a leader in critical sectors like pharmaceuticals, and the potential global health impact is enormous. Imagine the possibilities if India can leverage its expertise to develop affordable, life-saving medications for diseases that affect millions worldwide.
It really is a game changer. And speaking of strategic partnerships, that was another headline that caught my eye. This burgeoning relationship between India and France, with their trade reaching almost $20 billion, mainly in defense and aerospace, seems particularly significant. Could this be a model for future collaborations?
It's definitely a relationship worth watching. France has emerged as a key partner for India, and their collaboration extends beyond arms deals. They're cooperating in areas like technology, energy, cultural exchange.
And it's not just about the economic ties. There seems to be a deeper alignment in their vision for a multipolar world. Modi's upcoming visit to France, where he and Macron will co-chair the AI Action Summit, speaks volumes about their shared priorities.
Yeah, it's a recognition that the future of technology, particularly AI, it can't be shaped in isolation. It requires dialogue, collaboration, shared ethical frameworks to harness its potential, but also mitigate the risks.
It's a powerful message to send, especially in a geopolitical landscape that's constantly shifting. You know, these kinds of partnerships, they allow countries like India to diversify their relationships and pursue their interests more effectively on the global stage.
Now, while we've highlighted India's global aspirations, it's crucial to remember those internal challenges that continue to demand attention. Let's circle back to the Maoist insurgency, this conflict that has deep roots and continues to cast a shadow over parts of India.
Yes, the recent clash in Chhattisgarh,
Yes.
with casualties on both sides, serves as a stark reminder that this is an ongoing conflict with very real consequences for those caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, it's a complex and tragic situation, and it requires a multifaceted approach. Military operations alone can't solve the underlying socioeconomic disparities and historical grievances that fuel this insurgency. It calls for a combination of security measures, targeted development initiatives, and sincere efforts to address the legitimate concerns of marginalized communities.
It's a delicate balancing act that requires sensitivity, understanding, and a long-term commitment to peace and reconciliation. It's a reminder that even as India strides confidently onto the world stage, it still faces these complex internal challenges that demand careful attention.
And it highlights the importance of considering the human cost of these conflicts, the need for solutions that address both the immediate security concerns and those deeper systemic issues that perpetuate the cycle of violence.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From the soaring ambitions on display at Aero India to the sobering realities of internal conflicts and economic headwinds, we've explored India's delicate dance with global superpowers and their efforts to forge strategic partnerships that advance their interests.
It's clear that India is a nation on the move, a rising power that's demanding to be taken seriously. But there's one final piece of the puzzle that we need to address.
Okay.
The Indian rupee's recent tumble against the US dollar. This isn't just an abstract economic indicator. It has tangible impacts on the lives of everyday Indians.
Right. A weakening rupee can make imported goods more expensive, potentially impacting things like the cost of fuel.
Our essential commodity.
What factors are contributing to this downward pressure on the rupee? Is it mainly due to global economic trends, or are there internal factors at play as well?
It's often a combination of factors. We're seeing global trade tensions, concerns about rising interest rates in the US, and some investors pulling money out of emerging markets, like India. These are all external pressures that can contribute to a weakening currency.
But then you also have those internal factors to consider.
Right.
Things like India's current account deficit, the level of government spending, the overall health of the Indian economy. All of that plays a role in how the rupee performs.
Absolutely. It's this complex interplay of internal and external forces that can be really difficult to predict. And it underscores the fact that even as India strives for self-reliance, it remains deeply connected to the global economy and vulnerable to those fluctuations. It's a reminder that economics isn't just about abstract numbers on a screen. It's about people's lives, their purchasing power, their ability to make ends meet. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's turn our attention to what this all means for India's future. We've witnessed India's ambition to be a global leader in defense, technology, pharmaceuticals. We've explored its complex political landscape and its efforts to balance relationships with these global powers. We've also examined the economic hurdles it faces, including this recent decline of the rupee.
It's clear that India is a nation of contradictions, a land of both ancient traditions and cutting-edge innovation, a place where immense poverty coexists alongside extraordinary wealth. It's a story that's still being written, and the outcome is far from certain.
But that's what makes it so fascinating to watch. India is a nation on the move, and its journey will undoubtedly shape the 21st century in some profound ways.
So here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. With its burgeoning economy, its growing military might, and its increasingly assertive foreign policy, what role do you see India playing in the next decade? Will it emerge as a champion of democracy, a force for stability in a turbulent world, or something else entirely?
The answers to those questions, they remain elusive. But one thing is certain. India's rise is a story that demands our attention. It's a story full of complexities, contradictions, and immense possibilities.
And that's it for our deep dive into the headlines from India. We hope you found this journey as insightful and thought-provoking as we have. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're at this crucial point in India's journey. I mean, they're striving for economic dominance, making these bold moves on the world stage, yet at the same time, still grappling with these deep-seated internal challenges. It's just fascinating to watch this complex story unfold.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so interesting for our listeners. It's not just about these dry facts and figures. It's about understanding the human stories behind the headlines. You know, the aspirations, the struggles, the contradictions that make up the fabric of this incredible nation. You're right, it's about connecting those dots, drawing insights that go beyond the surface. So as we wrap things up here, let's try to distill all of this information into some key takeaways for our listeners. What would you say are the most important things to remember about India's current position?
I think the first takeaway is that India is without a doubt a rising power. We see it in their economic ambitions, their military advancements, and their increasingly assertive role in global affairs. They're not content to just participate. They want to lead. And they're taking concrete steps to achieve that.
Yeah, and that ambition is evident in everything we've talked about, from their push for technological innovation to those strategic partnerships with countries like France. But at the same time, they're facing some serious headwinds: the economic slowdown, the persistent social and political tensions, the weakening rupee. Those are challenges that can't be ignored.
Exactly, and I think that's the second takeaway. India's rise is not without obstacles. There are these deep-rooted inequalities, unresolved conflicts, and these vulnerabilities to global economic forces that could potentially derail their progress. You know, it's a reminder that even the most ambitious nations face limitations and setbacks.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to the third takeaway, the importance of understanding nuance. India's story isn't this simple narrative of just triumph or struggle. It's this complex tapestry, woven from these threads of ambition and adversity, progress and stagnation, hope and disillusionment. To truly grasp where India is headed, we need to embrace that complexity.
I completely agree. That's what makes a deep dive like this so valuable. It allows us to peel back those layers, examine the contradictions and the uncertainties, gain a much richer understanding of the forces shaping India's destiny.
It really has been insightful. So for our listener who's been with us on this journey, what's the most important question they should be asking themselves as they continue to follow this story?
I think the crucial question is this: how will India navigate this delicate balance between its domestic challenges and its global aspirations? Will they find a way to address those internal tensions while simultaneously pursuing these ambitious goals on the world stage?
It's a question that will really define India's trajectory in the years to come, and it's a question we'll continue to explore in future deep dives. But for now, we'll leave our listener with that thought-provoking question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey.